Game Day Garage presents Campus Blitz with PJ Glasser and Ryan Horvat.
Oh, welcome back to Game Day Garage's Campus Blitz, another episode, and today we wrap up our conference previews of the Power Four. We've talked Big 12, we've talked ACC, we have talked SEC. Now it is time to talk the Big Ten, the conference that has won the last 3 national championships, and they got a very good chance to win a 4th this year. We have 6 great guests to join us today, but our first guest, we're going to talk 3 different teams with him. We're going to talk Indiana, Purdue, and then we're also going to hit on Notre Dame as well. Always good to be joined by Dylan Sin, beat writer for the Journal-Gazette, covering all 3 of those teams, the Hoosiers, Boilermakers, and the Fighting Irish. You can give Dylan a follow on X at Dylan Sin. Dylan, always appreciate the time, man. Let's start with Indiana because they are the defending champs. And I think I probably already know the answer to this question, but I figured I'd just ask it if there is any kind of championship hangover with Indiana, because Cignetti strikes us as this guy that he's just probably not going to let that happen. But do you get the sense that this team is as hungry this year to win another one as they have been the first 2 years under Cignetti?
Yeah, I think they are. I think you're exactly right. He's not going to let it happen. But also, and he said this offseason, they have players in the program who have really embraced not letting it happen, right? Like there are guys who are back. He's built a culture at IU kind of similar to the one he had at James Madison, where he's like, a lot of those James Madison guys are gone now, but the guys who have been in the program now for 2 years, those are the new James Madison guys, right? Those are the guys that know our culture, know what we're trying to do, know how we're going to go about it. Now, the thing is, there is a little bit of a championship hangover in the physical sense, where they played 16 games last year. They missed a lot of winter conditioning and a lot of recovery time because they advanced so deep into the playoff, right? So that's just one of those things. It's inevitable when you win the championship, when you go that far. It's just tough. There's guys who needed off-season recovery time that would have been done earlier had they lost earlier. So that's one of those things where they had a little bit of an abbreviated offseason and they needed a good fall camp to get ready. They feel like they've had that camp, however, so far.
Obviously, Fernando Mendoza, the number 1 overall pick. We just watched him in the preseason the other night, wins the Heisman. They go on to win a national title, which I never thought we would be, saying when we're talking Indiana football, but it was an awesome story. Now the offense is going to look a little bit different, obviously, with Hoover coming over. He likes to throw the ball down the field. It does turn the ball over a little bit, but, I love that pickup. What does the offense look like? What's the difference, with obviously Mendoza, who's more of a dual threat now with Hoover taking over? And what else should we know about the offensive side of the ball? Is there any drop-off?
Yeah, I don't think there's going to be a ton of drop-off with the offense in general. Now, the quarterback, Josh Hoover, is a very, very good player. He's not Fernando Mendoza, right? He's a little bit shorter. His arm isn't quite as big, right? But he's more experienced than Mendoza was. He has 3 years as a starter at TCU. He's been a high-level quarterback for a while. He puts an incredibly high floor under the offense, right? And then it's a question of, okay, can the weapons elevate you to kind of where you were last year, even though the quarterback is maybe an A- instead of an A+, right? If that's the idea. And so they believe they have those kind of weapons. Charlie Becker and Nick Marsh at receiver. Nick Marsh coming over from Michigan State, really good player. That's one of the best 1-2 punches at receiver in the whole country, right? And then you have a running back. You bring back Lee Beebe, who was a big part for you at the beginning of last year before he got hurt. You bring back Kobe Martin, who was big, and you add Turbo Richard from Boston College, who, this is one of my favorite stats of the offseason. He averaged 5.2 yards per carry last year at Boston College. Every other ball carrier on that team averaged 2.8 yards per carry. So he wasn't really running behind the best offensive line, and now he comes over to Indiana where he does have a good offensive line, he's got a good passing game. That's a guy who's going to win you some games. And so they feel like they have the weapons around Josh Hoover to elevate him to the level they need him to be, even if he's not the Heisman Trophy winner.
Dylan, can you talk a little bit more about that receiving core? Because
Sure.
We're going to talk about Ohio State later, and they got Jeremiah Smith. Texas has got a really good wide receiver team room as well. But Indiana's got a chance maybe to have 2 first-round wide receivers, Charlie B. and then Nick Marsh, who they brought in from Michigan State. So do you see this being like similar to what it was where like Nick Marsh can kind of fill that Elijah Surratt role and they're going to have a really good 1-2 punch yet again?
I think absolutely, right? And so the question is, can you end up having the 1-2-3 punch they had at the end of last season with Elijah Surratt, with Omar Cooper Jr., and with Charlie Becker? Because when Charlie Becker came on at the end of the season, it was like, this is the deep threat we've been missing, right? The guy who's going to go down and get you a 40-yard pass down the field, whereas Surratt and Cooper are more underneath guys who are maybe going to make someone miss, right? And so Becker gives you that deep threat. Marsh is going to make someone miss underneath. He's a very, very strong physical wideout, that just a route technician, right? And Becker is just an explosive guy. You're going to throw it up to him. He's going to go get it as well as anyone in the country. Can you get that third receiver? That's what IU is looking for right now. They have several options at first slot guys. They like Tyler Morris, who transferred from Michigan a couple of years ago. They like Davion Chandler, who made some big plays for them last year. Shaz Preston is a transfer from Tulane. They have some guys that 1-2 punch is as good as anyone in the country. It's getting that third guy that's really going to elevate this offense.
Everybody talks about the offense, obviously, because of Mendoza and what he did last year. But the defensive side of the ball, they've been top 5 the last couple seasons as well. The linebacker room looks really good, as well as the secondary. How do you feel about the defense? Is there a weak spot, going into the season?
Frankly, I don't really think there's what you could call a weak spot on the defense. If you want to talk about the second cornerback, where you're losing D'Angelo Pons, you have to. Jamari Sharp is stepping up. He's very good. You need to find a second corner. They got AJ Harris from Penn State. They think he's the guy. We'll see how that goes. But the front seven is ridiculous. It's so good. The defensive line brings back Tyreek Tucker, who is an All-American, Mario Landino, who is just about as good. And then the defensive ends, you have guys you brought in, Josh Burner from Notre Dame, a couple of Kansas State guys. And then on top of that, they added just a week ago now, Stephen Daly and Kellen Wyatt, both guys who were awesome for them last year, thought they were out of eligibility. You bring them back because they have the extra year with the case in Colorado. It's about as deep of a group as you're going to find anywhere in the country.
How surprising was that Wyatt and Daly came back? Like, did people thought that maybe there was like a 30% chance it would happen, or were people like, this is like a 10% chance, like this would be great, cherry on the top to go along with the front seven that we had? But just how surprising was it that they got those guys back?
Yeah, it's certainly surprising, not because you didn't think the court ruling was coming. The court ruling that made basically everyone who had played the last 4 years eligible for a 5th year, that was kind of surprising, right? It was kind of thrown everyone for a loop. The NCAA is challenging, and we don't know if those guys are actually going to be eligible by the time the season starts, by midseason. We have no idea. But once that happened, it kind of made sense that both of those guys would come back because they both suffered really significant injuries at the end of last season. And so their draft stock got hit because of that, but they both would have been drafted pretty highly had they been healthy. And so now they get to come back. They get to be healthy. They get to get another year of NIL and then hopefully go get drafted again. It's really a perfect situation because they weren't in NFL camp, but they'd stayed in shape waiting for an opportunity. And so it was a perfect storm for IU, and it's just something that not a lot of other teams in the country were able to come up with.
Is the expectation again this season just at least a 10-win season? I mean, they get a little bit of a rough stretch. They get Nebraska October 10th. They get Ohio State at home, which is going to be a huge game. Good chance they're both 6-0 at that point. And then the next week they go on the road to take on Michigan. We don't know what they're going to look like this year, but what's the expectation this season? Another 10-win season, college football playoff?
I think that's a fair expectation, right? I don't think anyone at IU is saying if we don't go back-to-back, the sky is falling or anything like that. But I think the expectation is another playoff run because this team has enough back from last year where you can say the floor is incredibly high. There should not be anything below X, right? I think 9-3 would be pretty disappointing because you do have Ohio State, Michigan, USC is also on the schedule. So if you win 2 of those 3, if you beat Michigan and USC, you're probably in the playoff. And that's, again, crazy to say for Indiana. We know that, but that is the expectation. The floor that Kirk Cinetti has set under this program is we want to be in the dance. And they have the team. They have a team that can do it.
Dylan, is it still wild for you to just cover this team and be like, they're like a national powerhouse now?
Yeah.
They're truly one of like the biggest brands in the sport at this point. Is it still weird?
It is still very weird because I covered the team for 5-6 years when they were just Indiana, right? It was like, can we scrape together enough for a bowl game? You're getting excited about 1 or 2 maybe guys who are going to get drafted, and now you have this team where you're thinking. I was going through covering the playoffs last year. I was getting ready to cover the Rose Bowl, and then all of a sudden, IU they get like 7 commitments in one day from the transfer portal as they're getting ready to play the Rose Bowl. And it's like these guys are not messing around. This team, they know what they need to do to make this not just a 1-year thing, not just a 2-year thing, but a 5, 10, 20-year IU thing as a college football entity. And so they're not messing around. They believe they can make a sustainable powerhouse in Bloomington and make themselves a Big Ten contender for the foreseeable future.
I also feel like they've just kind of figured out the blueprint. Like we talked about this. We talk about this in college basketball as well. I mean, recruiting is still important, but you never know what you're going to get, even if it's a 5-star prospect with an 18, 19-year-old. But when you're hitting the portal and you're bringing in a Mendoza, bringing in a Hoover, and just grown men, I just feel like that's the new way to win in college athletics. Last one for me on Indiana. Just if this team doesn't go on to win 10 games, what would be the reason why? Other than health, which you could say about every team, what would be your biggest question mark or maybe their biggest flaw? With Cignetti, it's like so hard to even ask that question, man, because everything's so buttoned up. But what would, be the one thing that would maybe hold them back this year?
I think that's a great question. I think to me it would be if you don't find that third receiver, if the offensive line's a little bit leaky at a couple of spots, because there's a couple of spots that are unsettled, if not concerning. And then those things force Josh Hoover to press. And I think what we saw at TCU was that Josh Hoover was pressing sometimes. As you talked about the turnover, he turned the ball over because he felt like they had to score on every possession. If he feels like he's pressured to make plays when there's not anyone open or when he's not getting enough of a push in the run game, he's going to throw the ball into trouble, right? And then if he does that, then there's going to be short fields for the opposing team, which there were almost none of last year for this defense, right? And because Mendoza did a great job of taking care of the ball. So if that happens, I can see it being like, okay, maybe they're a notch and a half below where they were last year and they go 9-3.
We're talking with Dylan Sin here on Campus Blitz Game Day Garage. Give him a follow on X at Dylan Sin. He covers Indiana, Purdue, and Notre Dame for the Journal-Gazette. And let's get into the Irish. Dylan, the first pod that Ryan and I did this offseason, Ryan's a huge Notre Dame fan. And he goes, Peach, it's make or break for my Irish this year. It's championship or bust. Do you feel the same way, Dylan? And do a lot of people feel that way about Notre Dame this year, where it is a disappointing season if they're not lifting the trophy at the end of the year?
Well, I can tell you that Notre Dame feels that way, right? Like they have loaded this team up in a way that says, hey, we are serious about this season, right? Because they know CJ Carr is probably gone at the end of the season to be one of the very highest draft picks in the NFL, right? And so you have what they believe is a transcending quarterback, a what would be a franchise quarterback this for the NFL, right? And so you want to maximize that as best as you possibly can. They bring back, I think it's 9 starters on defense. They are loaded on defense. And then they brought in several transfers that are really highly ranked to supplement those guys. And so they have done everything possible this offseason to set themselves up for a run this season, right? And then they talked about last season about being left out of the playoff and what that felt like and how they need to be ready for the start of the season. Like that has been the theme of the offseason is leave no doubt and do it right away, right? Like they felt like they've gone off to some slow starts the last couple of years. How do we build our offseason to get off to a faster start? And then once that happens, how do we win by as many points as possible every single week to give people zero excuse to leave us out of the dance this time?
Yeah, my concern, man, is, and I know he just signed the contract extension through 2031, but I worry that when they do win, Marcus Freeman is going to be gone, just because I think that the right job is going to come calling. Like if you're just looking at this team on paper, on the offensive side of the ball, they look perfect. CJ Carr is an absolute stud. I haven't been this excited about a quarter. I mean, I was excited about Sam Hartman, which was, what it was, but not since Brady Quinn, man, have I been this excited about the quarterback position at Notre Dame. If you're a casual college football fan, though, obviously, like the best running back in the country, we just watched him for whatever reason carry the ball 12 times in the preseason. But Love's gone now, so how do they replace him in the backfield? Actually, both him and Price, both gone.
Yeah.
Would that be your concern? Maybe the backfield. How do you feel about the running back room?
I think that is maybe the concern of the team, at least to start the season, right? Is okay. We know that Jeremiah Levin, Jadarian, and Price were amazing players, right? Can you make the drop off small rather than huge, right? That's the job, because there's going to be a drop off in the run game. It's just inevitable. Those guys were so good that they made things easy. Okay, can you make things easy-ish, right? And so they have Aeneas Williams there. He's a guy who's waited his turn. He's a junior. He contributed as a freshman, sat last year as the third running back. Okay, it's his time. He's ready to go. He feels like he can be a number 1 25 carry a game guy if necessary, right? He's probably not going to be necessary because they're going to throw the ball a little bit, but he averaged like 9 yards a carry last year, mostly in mop-up time. He made some really big plays in the college football playoff a couple of years ago. They feel like he's ready to go. The question is behind him, right? Who do you have behind it? It's mostly freshmen or redshirt freshmen. Nolan James, Jonas Walton, guys like that. It's not particularly deep room anymore where you just had 2 first-round picks leave. So If Aeneas Williams, if he is not a 5 yard a carry guy, okay, who's next? We'll see.
The schedule has been a big talking point with Notre Dame this year, and the fact that they really only kind of have 2 games that I think a lot of people worry about. 2 games that you circle and say maybe they could drop this one: at BYU, home against Miami. For you, which one worries you more? Is it the trip to Provo? Is it the home game against the Canes?
It's a great question. I think it's probably still the home game against Miami, but that BYU road environment is really, really tough. And I'm excited to see them play there. But to me, it's Miami. Miami, to me, is one of the best teams in the country. They are not taking a step back this year. That is my opinion of Miami, is that they are going to be every bit as good as they were last year. They got the quarterback. Mario Cristobal is as good as there is in the country at developing the trenches. So that's going to be a war in South Bend, and it's going to be one of the best crowds ever in that stadium because there's so much pent up emotion about not only losing to Miami last year, but then that being the game that kept you out of the playoff. And then watching Miami make the run that they did. And so getting them in your house this year in November when it's going to be cold, it's going to be one of the best crowds that stadium has ever seen. It's going to be a lot of fun.
I'm with you. I think Miami, and I know that defense was so good last year, but I think they're going to be better with Mensa. He was great Duke last year, so I bet him to win the Heisman. Last one for me on Notre Dame. How do you feel about the defense? Under Freeman, you look at the talent; it's all there. If there's a weakness, where is it?
Yeah, that's a great question. It is. There really isn't a weakness on that defense. They have a guy at every position. The question to me would be, okay, Christian Gray is moving from outside corner to slot corner to nickel. And so he's been very good, generally speaking, very good at outside corner. Can he make that transition, right? Is that going to be the best thing for him? And we'll see how that goes. But generally speaking, they bring back so much experience on that defense. It really is remarkable in the era of the transfer portal and guys leaving, how much experience they bring back. And that's going to be the thing that probably carries them early this season as they figure some things out on offense with the skill positions.
Dylan, before we just ask you a couple questions on Purdue and then we let you go, to tie a bow on the Indiana and Notre Dame conversation, if you had to bet one of these teams to win the national title, you could only pick one. Would you take Indiana or would you take Notre Dame?
That's a great question. I've been thinking about that all offseason. I think it's Notre Dame. And that's no disrespect to Indiana, who I think is one of the 5 best teams in the country, but I think Notre Dame is one of the 2 best. I think it's Notre Dame and Oregon are the 2 best teams in the country right now as we sit here in August. And so, yeah, Indiana could be there, but if you're asking me to bet one, it's Notre Dame with all an experience they have back.
Going to Purdue, Barry Odom, year 2, year 1, they win 2 games. You know what's crazy, man? Was it 2 years ago? It was the final game of the season, and Purdue actually beat Indiana. I think it was like 35.
3 years ago. Yeah, it was 2023. Yeah.
And then Indiana was the Signetti hire. And
that's right. Purdue has not won a Big Ten game since that moment. They have lost 18 in a row. They have not won a power conference game since that moment. So it's been tough for the Boilermakers up there in West Lafayette.
Let's just start there then. Is goal number 1 this year win a conference game? Is it make a bowl? Like, what are realistic expectations for Purdue this season?
So the problem for Purdue, and I think that let's level set here, they will be a better team than they were last year. I don't think there's really any doubt about that. They've done some good things in the transfer portal this offseason. Problem is the schedule is difficult, very difficult. They play not only a Big Ten schedule, but they play 11 power conference games. They're one of the few teams in the country that do that. They play Notre Dame in the non-conference, and they also play Wake Forest, who won 9 games last year. And so I think, to me, a successful season would be 4 wins. Like, if you go from 1 to 2 to 4, that's obvious progress. And then maybe the schedule's a little bit lighter next year, and you can make a run at a bowl. You can see where you go. I don't think a bowl is realistic this year just because of the schedule. 4 wins, that's genuine progress. You'll feel very happy about that because that means you won at least, to me, 2 conference games.
Any players to watch on Purdue this season, Dylan? Like any potential draft picks or any impact transfers that they're excited about that maybe people can keep their eye on?
Yeah, there's a couple of them. Fame Ijaboy, who is the running back from Minnesota. He was very good for Minnesota last year, kind of helped. Darius Taylor was banged up. Ijaboy took a lot of carries for them. I think coming over in conference transfer, he knows how to play at this level. He'll be good. And then Elo Medozi, defensive end guy. He was at Army. He was a game wrecker at Army, just a terror coming off the edge. Transferred to Georgia last year and didn't have quite the impact that they were hoping he would, but he was a good rotational player for Georgia. Now he comes to Purdue. You're hoping you can unlock what you saw when he was at West Point a couple of years ago. So those are a couple, one on each side of the ball, that I'm really looking forward to seeing how well those guys can play at Purdue and help them get off the schneid there.
Absolutely love it. Dylan, this was awesome, man. Beat writer, Journal Gazette, covers IU, Purdue, and Notre Dame. Give Dylan Sin a follow on X, @DylanSin. Always good talking to you, man. Have a great season, and we'll hope to talk to you again soon.
Absolutely, guys. Thanks for having me on. As always, this is great.
Yeah,
Thanks, man.
Good stuff from Dylan Sin, Indiana, Notre Dame, and Purdue. Now let's go to Penn State and talk with our guy Daniel Gallen, who covers the Nittany Lions for Lions 24/7. Give Daniel a follow on X, Daniel JT Gallen. Daniel, always good to see you, pal. Ryan and I were all in on Penn State last year, as a lot of people were. I mean, we were talking about that team. There was so much excitement. What has it been like covering the team last year with all those expectations, and now going into this season with the new coach? They're flying under the radar, and expectations are just that they'll be, kind of a 7-8, maybe a 9-win team this year.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely a lot different than what where we were at this point last year. I made the joke when we were out in Big Ten Media Days, like, last year when we were out in Vegas, like the entire Ohio State beat, was at every Penn State availability, talking to James Franklin, talking to Drew Aller. The Michigan guys were there. A bunch of other reporters were, trying to nail down what that Penn State team was going to be. And this year, just it was different. Like there were more Penn State beat writers there because we were out in Chicago, but there were other places for that interest to go, for other people in the league to pay attention to. So I think describing Penn State as under the radar right now, I think that is a good way to look at it. We'll see, in a couple weeks, what that looks like. If you have a nice start, what that can do on the national stage. But yeah, I mean, it's definitely different. I think there's a lot more relaxed sense in the building. I don't want to say it's like a house money feeling right now, but I think that this is a team that just wants to go out and play.
I'm all in on Penn State. I don't even think I told PJ this yet. I actually just bet them to make the playoff, which you could get 3-1. I'm not going to go as far as a 20-1 to win the Big Ten, but I don't know. It could intrigue me. I'm a Matt Campbell guy. I lived in Iowa years ago when he got the job at Iowa State, and I think he could coach, man, and I've always wanted to see what he could do at a bigger program. They had some successful seasons, obviously, at Iowa State. They won double-digit games a couple of years ago. But let's start with the offensive side of the ball, because last year I was excited about Drew Aller. Now I'm talking myself into him as, like, the Steelers quarterback. I like Singleton and Allen, but, like, what's the backfield look like? Let's talk a little bit about the quarterback position. How do you feel about the offense going into the season? Because it's going to be completely new look this year.
Yeah, I mean, I think when you start with offensive coordinator Taylor Mauser, he's someone that's regarded as a really creative play caller, someone who can really scheme guys up. And, he's saying all the right things right now, as opposed to, as in terms of, hey, like this is the personnel we have. We're going to play to that personnel. If we have someone that, has the hot hand, we're going to make sure they get the ball. We're going to keep these guys involved. Saying all the right things in the preseason. I think when you look at the talent, Rocco Becht, one of the most experienced quarterbacks coming back this year in college football in 2026. He's played a lot of games. He played last year with injuries to both shoulders. He had to get surgery on his non-throwing shoulder at the end of the season. He's back, ready to go. He had this team, pretty close to a college football playoff berth 2 years ago. So he's played in big games. I think when you look at the backfield, Carson Hansen, James Peoples, Quentin Martin, I think you are looking at a little bit of a running back by committee type situation. But Carson Hansen was a bell cow at Iowa State last year. He's shown he can do that. Martin and Peoples, I think, are potential plays for you there. In terms of the pass catchers, this wide receiver group, maybe this is the year that Penn State wide receivers have a good year. Chase Sowell, Brett Eskelson came over from Iowa State. Like Eskelson's regarded as one of the fastest guys on the team. Sowell is just big bodied, a little bit of a type of wide receiver Penn State hasn't had in a while. And he's had production at a couple different spots in college football. So I think you feel good about those guys. Tight end, Ben Bramer, I think he's going to have a huge year. Like 6'7", 250, red zone weapon. And then you pair him with Andrew Rapplier coming back, Gabe Burkle coming over from Iowa State. Really, really good, selection of weapons there. And Penn State's going to be able to be really creative, with their personnel groupings, talking about 2 tight ends, 3 tight ends, 3 wide receivers, 4 wide receivers, 2 running backs. Like you can do a lot of different things. And then your offensive line, you get some guys back, mix in some guys who are making the leap up. I think there's a ton of talent there. Not necessarily a ton of Big Ten experience, but I think right now, I think you can see where things can work out there.
You know, I always love in the offseason, Daniel, because we're all focused on where the players are going, but there are always certain moves in the coaching cycle that I find interesting. And I think Campbell bringing in D'Anton Lynn to be the DC was one of my favorite moves. He was great at UCLA, great at USC. Jim Knowles just didn't work out like they thought it would last year. But I think Lynn is a great hire. And much like the offense, Campbell brought over a lot of Iowa State guys on defense with them. So how do you think that side of the ball is going to look this year? And what have been the early thoughts on Lynn?
The defensive situation is really interesting because the offense, like you had the offensive coordinator come over, you initially had the wide receivers coach come over, you had the quarterbacks coach come over, and you had like the quarterback, the running back, the wide receivers, the tight ends. You look at defense, the safeties and the linebackers came over, but the Iowa State influences not as strong there. And then you look at the coaching staff. Where Deion Broomfield, the pass game coordinator, safeties coach, he came over from Iowa State. But then, Terry Smith stayed, brought in Christian Smith from Northwestern. Akaika Molloy came in from UCLA. D'Anton Lynn came in from USC. Like, it was a lot of mixing and melding things together there. And I think that makes it really interesting in terms of, getting guys up to speed, getting guys on the same page. I do think there is a lot of talent, especially in the secondary. I think Marcus Neal, the safety who can do a lot of different things for you, I think he can have a big year. Jeremiah Cooper, he's a redshirt senior. If he doesn't get hurt at the end of September last year for Iowa State, like, he's in an NFL training camp right now. Like, he's regarded as that kind of playmaker. So he is back. He, I think, should be healthy for week 1, but he is someone that can really do some things for you. So I think this defense, it's like a little bit more of like a wait and see in terms of how it fits together, what it actually looks like, what the mechanics are in terms of personnel. But I think that where they are right now, I think there's good reason to be, excited or optimistic about it.
How do you feel about the schedule? No Oregon, no Ohio State. I mean, there's some tough ones there, but you look at the win totals, and even in kind of like a rebuild year, the win total is like 8.5. So the expectation is to win 9 games. You think that's realistic? Like, when you look at this, what do you think could happen this year?
Yeah, I mean, when you think about all the change that happened from last year, everyone who left, for the NFL, everyone who left for Virginia Tech and elsewhere, and then you think about just what goes into a coaching change, et cetera, you're kind of like, oh yeah, this feels like 8 wins, 9 wins, that sort of thing. And then you sit down and look at the schedule and you start playing the schedule game, and like you get to 10 a lot quicker than like you feel comfortable with or than you're expecting. So I think the schedule sets up really nicely. The big thing from the James Franklin era, these past couple years from like 2022, 2023, 2024, they didn't lose games they weren't supposed to. They didn't get picked off, in those years by Maryland, by Rutgers, by UCLA, that sort of thing. Does Matt Campbell have that same, is it the same under him? I think the talent is there, but yeah, I think that's something I'm interested to see. But yeah, I mean, you look at that pivot point in the middle of October where you're home against USC, then you go to Michigan. I think we'll learn a lot about that team. But the thing is, with how the schedule ends, like, even if you lose those 2 games, you can win out. You can get maybe potentially a ranked win at Washington down the stretch. You could be 10-2 thinking about, looking at, hey, are we number 12? Are we 13, 14? Are we number 10? Like, what does that look like? So it's a thing where I don't necessarily sit there and say like, yeah, this is a college football playoff team. This is an 11-1 team, with what we're looking at. But once you factor in the context of the schedule, that picture starts to change a little bit. And I think some people, you can let your imagination run a little bit.
Certainly not. I mean, we're getting a comment on YouTube who's saying won't make any wild runs, but Penn State is definitely a sleeper. I agree. Ryan agrees. And the schedule, I didn't think I would be interested in Penn State, but the fact that they avoid those big teams make them intriguing. In year 1, what do you think is the goal that fans want to see from Matt Campbell? Do they want to see the offense be a little bit more prolific? Obviously, the big story under Franklin was he could never win those big games. And again, as the schedule sits right now, he doesn't look like he's going to have any matchups against any top 5 type teams. But what do you think is the goal for Matt Campbell there in year 1 in Happy Valley?
I think the fan base, when you're looking pretty micro, I think they want to see signs of life from the offense, signs of life from the passing game. And, to show that, hey, like, Penn State can develop wide receivers. Penn State can have a quality passing game. I think that's what people want to see. I also think that people, you talk about, hey, do wins on the field lead to momentum on the recruiting trail? And, Penn State, the staff has had some issues with this class of 2027, guys that were in the, thought to be in the mix, but ended up going elsewhere, that sort of thing. But this was a staff that was put together quickly, didn't have time to, develop a lot of relationships and get some momentum. I think people want to see, hey, win some games on the field. Does that help you on the recruiting trail? And then can you, get it rolling in 2028 and beyond? So I think that's a little bit of an off the field subplot, something our message board posters are really interested in. But I think people want to see them win the games they're supposed to, some fireworks on offense, and then, hey, let the chips fall where they may.
Yeah, I think Penn State, definitely a team to watch for sure this year in the Big Ten. Always great talking to Daniel Gallen, covers Penn State for Lions 24/7, and give him a follow on X at Daniel JT Gallen. Daniel, appreciate the time as always, my friend. Have a great season and hope to catch up with you again at some point.
Thanks, PJ and Ryan. Talk to you guys later.
All right, good stuff there from Daniel. Let's talk some Michigan Wolverines now as we welcome on Clayton Sayfie, who joins us for the Wolverine.com for On 3. Give Clayton a follow on X at CSAF23. Clayton, appreciate the time, man. And I think Michigan's way more intriguing than the national media is kind of talking about them this season, because you get the new coach in Whittingham, but then you also have Bryce Underwood, who was, the undisputed number 1 overall recruit coming out of high school in 2025. And if you can just put that all together, it could be a special season for Michigan. So do you think the bigger story going into the season is to see if Whittingham is a good fit for this program, or if Bryce Underwood takes that big step in his sophomore season?
That's a great question. And honestly, I think it might be the Bryce Underwood part of it, because I do like a lot of the talent that they have across the roster. Of course, any coaching staff in today's college football wants more depth, and Kyle Whittingham has talked about that. It might take a class or two for them to get where they want to be in that regard. But at the end of the day, Sharon Moore recruited really well. Jim Harbaugh recruited well. There's a lot of talent on this roster. You have a quarterback who was really highly touted coming out of high school, was put in a tough situation last year, did okay at times, but didn't show up and play his best football in the bigger games. And now it's kind of that if you use that word. And I think that's what we're all waiting to see is, the receiving core is better. The offensive line's better. You have great running backs that might be the best tandem in the country. The defense should be good. I think that the defense will get better as the year goes on. So we'll see what they are early on. But a lot of it is riding on Underwood. And, I think that it's just, you're not going to know what he's going to be until you get out there with the live bullets in terms of how much improvement he made from last year.
Yeah, it's kind of where I wanted to go too, because last year they were 14th in rushing, averaging, over 200 rushing yards per game. And I know Haynes left, but they should be even better this year. What about the wide receiver room? Do they got guys that could create separation, get open? Do you worry about that at all? Other than Underwood, how do you feel about that room?
I think on paper, it's one of the better receiving cores Michigan's had in a while. Andrew Marsh comes back after breaking some freshman records here at Michigan last year, 45 catches, over 650 yards, 5 total touchdowns. And then they bring in J.J. Buchanan, who was a freshman at Utah last year, the only guy on this offense that's actually been in this system under Jason Beck before. And he had 9 contested catches, according to PFF. He's kind of a jump ball type receiver, former tight end, former basketball player, if you want to go that route too, and use the cliche there for a guy who can go up and get the ball. But he is somebody that I think is going to add a different element where you can play him in the slot, almost like if you were to split out a tight end, but he's kind of more of a receiver. And then they have guys that have played a lot of football here at wide receiver that are further down on the depth chart this year than they have been in the past. And that just tells you how much they've upgraded at that position. And then a couple intriguing tight ends too that they can throw to, and the running backs they can throw to. So yes, I think that, let's say the same Bryce Underwood from last year came in and started this season, he would be much better because the receivers are better. 6 offensive linemen that have started games at Michigan are back on the roster, plus, additions. And then the running backs are still strong. So the infrastructure around the quarterback offensively is really good. And I like the coordinator and Jason Beck too.
Clayton, what do you think is the most important game on the schedule for Michigan this year? We were just talking about Penn State with Daniel Gallen and how they kind of avoid all the top teams. Michigan is the quite opposite. They got to play Ohio State, obviously, Oregon this year, Indiana. They get the Buckeyes and the Ducks on the road. They also get Oklahoma in week 2, which I kind of think is their biggest game, because if they win that, there's a shot they could be 6-0 heading into the Indiana game. And, right now I'm looking at lines, and Michigan's it's pretty much a pick 'em in that game. The fact that it's just early season, it's Whittingham's first game, I think that game is just so massive for both of those teams, considering how hard their conference schedule is. But with all those tough teams that Michigan's going to have to play this year, what for you kind of sticks out on the schedule?
Yeah, most important has to always be Ohio State around here. But I see your point. I think Oklahoma and Indiana are the two games that, is just going to continue to tell you in the beginning of the year and then midway through the season where this team's at and where they can go. And part of that is the result, right? Like you mentioned, if you beat Oklahoma, then you're halfway through the season, potentially undefeated. I know there are some tough games still in there. You got to go to Minnesota, who has a lot coming back. You have to play Iowa at home. Those are losable games, but at the same time, you'll be favored to win those. But the Indiana one, it might be the biggest, I think, before November, and will tell us what kind of spot Michigan is in going into November. Because if they can go into the Oregon game with 1 or 2 losses, and you never know what could happen. It's tough to win on the West Coast against a team that good. That I think I would have in preseason number 1. But still, if you can go into that with a little bit of a buffer, then I think you're in a good spot to potentially make the playoff, which is one of the big goals for any team in this caliber.
The defense was still good last year, but not your typical Michigan defense. They make the hire of Jay Hill. How did you feel about that? And then how do you feel about the defense last season? I know they were 0-3 when they gave up more than 150 rushing yards. So not used to that, especially with the Harbaugh era. But how do you feel about the defense going into the season, especially with the new coordinator coming in?
Yeah, Wink Martindale really didn't have much of a head coach. He didn't really have an offense to deal with in 2 years here. So he was put in a tough spot. And I think that, his defenses, they didn't hold up last year in the bigger games, USC, Ohio State. You saw the Texas game at the end of the year where, you had some guys out, but it was a bit of a disaster late when they gave up their fourth quarter lead. So I think that, regardless, that you have a couple difference makers on that defense. John Henry Daly at the edge rusher spot. He was the first team All-American at Utah last year, coming off an injury. And then Rod Moore, also coming off an injury, has only played 3 games, 86 snaps in the last 2 years with some complications with his knee. He's healthy now. So if those guys remain healthy and return to form, which I think they can, then you can really build around those 2 difference makers. Jay Hill is the coordinator. I like the hire. It took him a year to get BYU up to speed. Now, it wasn't all up to him, but he was much better in years 2 and 3, and he's called his defense the most complicated scheme in the country. So how good are they right away? Are they good enough to stack up with Oklahoma and what we think could be an improved offense for the Sooners this year in week 2? Because that's going to be the first big challenge. Then I think they have a little bit of time to figure it out, but we'll see there. So he has said there's some similarities to what Michigan ran under Jesse Minter, which is music to Michigan fans' ears because, he's an absolute stud and now the head coach of the Ravens. So I think that if they can continue to play that bend, don't break style, they have a lot of talent here to work with, especially if guys return to form coming off injury.
As a Ravens fan, Clayton, absolutely loving the Jesse Minter hire. So
Love
totally
that.
With you there, man. He's going to be a stud. I thought, too, one of the great moves that Whittingham made was bringing over his longtime offensive line coach with him from Utah and Jim Harding, who's one of the best in the business. I mean, look, you think of those great Michigan teams going back to Harbaugh days, or just when Michigan's good, man. It's always the line of scrimmage. You were talking about a little bit and on the defensive side of the ball, but are they kind of excited about what they have up front this season? And, they do lose Justice Haynes in the backfield. Do they still feel like they could be pretty dominant on the ground?
Absolutely. I mean, Utah led the country last year with 6 yards per carry. Michigan was 14th in the country in rushing offense a year ago. So you mesh the scheme and the coaching staff from Utah with the personnel at Michigan. I know Justice Haynes played a part in that, but Jordan Marshall ended up being their number 1 rusher, and they bring in Savion Hyder, the 5-star true freshman, number 1 running back in the class. The offensive line is a year older. I mean, and everybody stuck around. A couple guys entered the portal, but they all withdrew. And then you bring in Andrew Babalola, who was a 5-star who got hurt last year, missed his freshman season. He'll be in the mix for playing time. I'm not sure he's going to start, but that just shows you, I think, how hot the competition has been there during fall camp. So I think the offensive line is going to take a step forward. That's going to help Underwood out. It's going to provide a nice run game for him. So it's a win-win-win, I think, in all those facets.
Clayton, before we let you go, in about 30 seconds, what would be your prediction for Michigan this season? If you had to put out maybe what you think their record is going to be, what would you say?
I've been going with 8-4. I just think that Oklahoma, Indiana, Oregon, Ohio State, I think those teams are better than Michigan coming into the season. And it doesn't mean you can't beat them. I mean, 2 of those games are at home, but I'd say a couple coin flips don't go their way in year 1 under Whittingham. But I think we'll come out of the season feeling like, yeah, it's disappointment if you don't make the playoff, if you don't beat Ohio State. That has to be the sentiment here at Michigan. But you feel like you're on the right track and that your identity is back under this coaching staff. I think it's a good fit. But this year, to get it done and make the playoff, I don't have them there yet.
That is a tough schedule. Great stuff.
Yeah.
Clayton Sayfie, the Wolverine.com for On3. Give him a follow on X at CSAF23. Always appreciate the time, Clayton. Have a great season, man, and hope to catch up with you during the season.
Appreciate it. For sure. Anytime. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Good stuff there from Clayton. Let's talk some Iowa Hawkeyes now as we welcome on Tyler Tachman, who joins us, Iowa beat reporter for the Des Moines Register. Give him a follow on X at Tyler_T15. Tyler, it is year 28 for Kirk Ferentz in Iowa City, man. Talk to us about how the fans feel about Kirk Ferentz. I know a couple of Iowa people, and I feel like there's such a love-hate relationship. It's almost like the Mike Tomlin thing. You know you're going to get like 8 wins every year, but you're just like not going to get that team that's competing for a national championship. They're always going to be great defensively. He hasn't gotten the quarterback figured out. So as he's getting ready to enter his 28th year, what are the thoughts of Kirk Ferentz leading the charge for the Hawkeyes?
I would say from the fan base, for the most part, it's appreciation, it's admiration, it's knowing what he has done not only for the Iowa football program, but the university. And, you know, he's a legend in Iowa, but there also is a small segment of the fan base that, I mean, when you've been at a place for almost 3 decades, there just is going to be some fatigue there. There is going to be some desire for change. But I would say for the most part, I think the temperature is people have a great appreciation for what Kirk Ferentz has done. And the people that think there is more levels for Iowa to go, and there certainly is, but the grass isn't always greener. You never know that what's going to happen once the post-Kirk Ferentz era hits, which is going to be at some point, unless he just continues to coach for eternity. There's going to be, you know, it's possible that things could get worse. So I think there is also a feeling of that things could get better. Yes, Iowa could be consistently a college football playoff team and a national contender because they're not all that far away from there. But at the same time, things could get much worse because Iowa's one of the most consistent programs in college football.
Yeah, I'm biased because I'm from the Midwest, but I think it's one of the best atmospheres, one of the best programs. I love Iowa football because they run the rock. I think they're 20-2 over the last 4 years when they run for more than 150 yards. Last year they did it 10 times, running for at least 130, and they won 9 of those games. So like, if it's not broke, don't fix it. But now, what's the quarterback position look like? Me and my buddies back home, like, we always joke, you know, because Iowa quarterbacks, like, I could go all the way back to Jay Christensen. Never really works out. But last year, Gronowski was fun, and he could run the ball. This year, you got Hank Brown. What's the quarterback room look like? Who's going to end up winning that job? And does anything change with that offense? Or is it just the same Iowa offense that we've kind of got used to the last 3 decades?
Yeah, Gronowski was an important stepping stone because it finally gave Iowa like somewhat quality quarterback play, which the fan base has just been starving for. It wasn't in the most conventional sense because he did a lot of damage with his legs, and it wasn't like a Lamar Jackson elusive style. It was more of a, you know, run kind of down your throat and lower your shoulder into people. So it was a different type of, you know, it was more like a Tim Tebow kind of toughness running style. But so that was important to finally take a step forward at the quarterback position. This season, it's going to be two guys who, unlike Gronowski, just don't have a lot of experience at the college level. It's Jeremy Hecklinski and Hank Brown. Those are the two guys that are in competition for the starting job. They went through the spring. Neither one of them really separated themselves, so it's continued into fall camp. And an important benchmark that we just hit, it's called Kids Day at Kinnick. It's an open, basically scrimmage live scenario. And Jeremy Hecklinski looked incredible. He looked really good. And Hank Brown, on the other hand, did not look very good at all. So it was a pretty wide discrepancy. As you would expect, Kirk Ferentz kind of, when he talked to the media after it, he kind of tamped expectations and downplayed how good of a day Jeremy Hecklinski had. He didn't come out right and say, yeah, we're giving the job to Jeremy Hecklinski. So it's still, we don't know who Iowa's starter is going to be yet. Public perception and fans are very much in the Hecklinski camp just because he looks so good at that live, live game scenario on Saturday. But Kirk Ferentz also didn't rule out this competition potentially going into the season. So this thing has really kind of dragged on, and it's possible that it could go, stretch into the season where both guys get reps.
Iowa's tight end Tyler, as a lot of us know. So talk to us about some of the tight ends we could expect this year, maybe some of the other skill position guys. Despite you just talked about the quarterback position, who are some of the other guys on offense to keep an eye out for?
The tight end room and running back room, both loaded. Those are the two position groups that I think Iowa feels the best about on the entire team. Tight end, DJ Vanami, definitely a name to know. He's someone who just totally exploded toward the latter stages of last season. He's someone who could be, an all Big Ten guy, a potential, talk about Iowa tight ends in the NFL. He could be the next one, but Addison Estrenga in the tight end room, he's coming off of a season-ending injury. You have a younger guy like Thomas Meyer, who's up and coming, Zach Ortworth, who is a veteran guy in that room. So there's a mix of guys that could be an impact in the passing game from the tight end room. And then running back wise, Kamari Moulton coming back. He's an established guy last season. He would have had more touchdowns and yards, but Gronowski kind of stole some of his rushing touchdowns with all the damage he did on the ground. But they brought in LJ Phillips Jr. from South Dakota, transfer, had almost 2,000 yards rushing last season. So he adds another more firepower to that running back room. And then a couple other guys, Nathan McNeil, who got playing time as a true freshman, and Xavier Williams, who's kind of a power runner, low to the ground. So there's four guys. They have a stable of guys, not just talent-wise, but also depth. So tight end, running back, offensive line, that's probably, at least on paper, going to carry Iowa's offense to begin the season when we find out what the passing game looks like.
Last one for me, you look at the schedule and what do you think realistic expectations are? Because we kind of opened up the interview by saying they're consistent. They win 8 games, 9 games, but they don't have Indiana. They don't have Oregon. They don't have USC on the schedule. They don't have Penn State. Ohio State, they get it home. Some tough road games, obviously, Washington, Michigan. I think Northwestern and Minnesota are going to be sleeper teams, but can this be a 10-win season? Maybe they're the surprise of the Big Ten, or where are you at?
I would pick 9. I think that's the most realistic. And they have a 3-game stretch to open Big Ten play. They go at Michigan, home against Ohio State, and then on a short week, they play on a Friday at Washington. So the first 3 games of that Big Ten schedule are just absolutely brutal. What I think the most likely outcome is they either win one of those 3, like they steal the game against Michigan, and then maybe they have a slip up the rest of the one slip up the remainder of the way against, at Illinois or at Northwestern, or they go 0-3 in those 3 big games to open Big Ten play, and then they sweep the rest of the way. So the bad news is the beginning of that Big Ten schedule is just absolutely brutal. The good news is it lightens up after that, but I think probably 9 wins given the uncertainty at quarterback. Defensive line is a big question right now, and also special teams. Iowa lost a ton of production on special teams. So with those questions, I think probably 9 wins is where I land at as the most realistic scenario.
All right, very good. Great stuff. Tyler Talkman, Iowa beat reporter for the Des Moines Register. Give him a follow on X at Tyler_T15. Appreciate the time, Tyler. Great to meet you, man. Have a great season, and hope to catch up again soon.
Yep, thanks for having me.
Good stuff. Tyler Talkman talking Iowa. All right, let's talk a little Oregon Ducks now with Zachary Neal, who joins us. Give Zach a follow on X at Zachary C. Neal, Oregon beat reporter for USA, today's Ducks Wire, co-host of the Believe in Oregon podcast and the Ducks Rising podcast as well. Zach, appreciate the time, man. I'm interested if you're starting to feel this way, because I've been talking about this on some shows I've been doing the last 2 weeks. I feel like there's a team in the NFL and college football that everybody's picking right now. All these people that come on these shows and all these guests that do hits, it's the Dallas Cowboys in the NFL and it's the Oregon Ducks in college football. Everybody is loving the Ducks this year. Are you starting to get a little bit nervous, Zach, with how trendy the Ducks are becoming with the national media, it feels like?
I gotta say, excuse me. Also, I'm a little bit sick. My kids got me sick, so excuse the voice today. But
Damn kids.
damn kids. I know, 4-year-old and 2-year-old. There's no way around it. I'm surprised you said the Dallas Cowboys. It's we'll just say not a Cowboys fan that took me by surprise. But yes, there are a little bit of nerves going into this year. I think that Oregon is used to being in that conversation. Not quite to this level, though. I mean, they were rated 2 in the AP Top 25, which is the highest in program history. It's not unreasonable. It's not unexpected with all they've got coming back. It makes sense, but it's still kind of like, well, okay, let's Oregon fans I think they're ready to get hurt again, and hopefully it doesn't happen, but there's a lot of excitement in Eugene for sure.
I feel your pain, dad life. I got my son screaming in the next room if you hear a 12-year-old yell. And this is our last week before he goes back to school. So I'm in the kitchen hiding right now. So I'm a big Dan Lanning guy. Do you feel like the pressure – I'm a Notre Dame fan, so I feel like the pressure is on because I think there's a good chance that Marcus Freeman – everybody loves him. I think there's a chance that he leaves for the NFL. But with Dan Lanning, he was like everybody's darling. There was the viral videos, everybody the big rah-rah guy. And then the last couple of years, man Kurt Cignetti showed up and he wins at Indiana. And now he's, the hottest coach in the country. Kirby's not going anywhere. Do you feel like the pressure is on Dan to win a national title, to at least get to that championship game? Because he could coach, he could win. But, you go back to the year where they couldn't beat Washington, Kalen or Michael Penix team. Does he have to eventually here in the next year or two, especially this year with Dante Moore, win the big one?
I would say in the next 5 years, there's a ton of pressure to win a championship for sure. This year, people say championship or bust. Yeah, that's a nice thing to say when it's August or September. If I'm being honest, the pressure this year is not to win the championship. It's to not get blown out in the last game of the year and to make it to the playoff, deep into the playoff. Like if you can get to the semifinals of the championship game and not be embarrassed, I think 90% of the fan base would take that. So we know that they're good enough to get there. But when you get there, it's sometimes you need a little bit of luck. Sometimes you need injury luck. The ball needs to bounce your way. And that's not just for the Ducks. Every team that's ever won a championship has used a little bit of luck to do it. So I think they're right in there with the Indianas, Ohio State, Texas, Georgia. Like they're good enough to get there. They've got the coaching. You just kind of need the ball to bounce your way. It didn't that way last year or the year before that against Ohio State. So, I don't know if we're going to pick our champions at some point today. I think Oregon's going to win it this year because to me, it's like, why not? Why not this year? And that's not saying if it's not this year, it can't happen again. It's just they have everything they need this year to actually do it. So I'm a bit of an optimist too. So I think they can.
Zach, we've had a few guests on before you. We had an Indiana guy on, Penn State, Michigan, and all of them felt like Oregon was the best team in the Big Ten. As I talked about, a lot of people feel that way. I think the Ducks have the best quarterback in the country in Dante Moore. Maybe some others want to argue Arch or somebody else, but he's certainly top 2 or top 3. Outside of him, what do you think is the biggest strength on this team in the position group?
That's one of the things about this team is I could list 5 different positions and it's kind of, understandable. I would say the defensive line is incredible. They brought back all 4 returning starters from last year. Mateo Uiagalelei, Amari Washington, Bear Alexander, and Tatum Tuioti. Like those guys all could be in NFL training camps right now. And they decided to come back for one more time. And then they've got the depth behind that too. I think this defense as a whole could be, if not, it's tough to say the best in the Big Ten when you've got people like Ohio State and Indiana. But Ohio State also lost a lot of guys in the first round last year. So I think it's, they're the gold standard in college football. So you kind of always expect them to be right there again and to reload. I think Oregon could really be that Ohio State, Indiana type defensive team this year.
Really quick, going back to Dante Moore, just because there's a good chance he's the number 1 overall pick. Last year, he would have most likely, been the second quarterback. He definitely would have been the second quarterback taken. We don't know where he would have went. Maybe number 2 overall. But I was hyping him up, saying he was better than Mendoza, and then the college football playoff game happens. The first play happens. He throws a couple picks. Actually throws 1 pick, but it was a bad pick. That's a complicated defense, especially for a young quarterback to see, especially with what they do with their safeties. But if there's one thing that he needs to improve on this year, not only to win a national title, but to win the Heisman, be the number 1 overall pick, what would it be, if anything? Because, he can make every throw.
He can. I think it's the mental game. It's a little bit more poised. We saw him when he got into the biggest times of the year. Especially the college football playoff, and even against Indiana in the the regular season, he struggled. He got happy feet. He's really what we call a rhythm passer. Kind of like when a basketball player needs to see a free throw go in before they can start kind of taking the lid off the basket. He needs to see a few completions early in the game, then he can kind of get into his rhythm. If he doesn't get into that, he gets happy feet. He starts rushing through his progressions and making some bad decisions. I think that's something where he's now his 3rd year in the program, his 2nd year as a starter at Oregon. He knows this offense really well. You talk to the coaches, they compare him to, like a Bo Nix or a Dylan Gabriel as far as the offensive mastery goes. So I think we see that this year. He kind of knows the answers to the test a little bit more, as he would say. But now you just got to put it on the field.
Zach, you talked about how loaded this team is. I asked you which position group's the strongest, and you're like, honestly, like the entire team. So what would be the biggest question mark for you coming into the season, right? Like, what would hold the Ducks back if they don't get to the championship game or if they don't end up winning it this year?
I think right now you're looking at the offensive line, but that's also, they have so much talent there. It's just new. They sent 3 guys to the NFL last year. So you're replacing 3 starters. You got one of the best centers in the nation and Pancho Lalulu coming back. And then they've got so much talent. They really didn't go to the transfer portal this year because I think they believe in the guys that they've had in the system. This is not just a homer thing to say. I think by the time we get to end of October and November, we could be talking about the offensive line as a strength for this team and one of the better position groups on the team. But right now, we just haven't seen it. We haven't seen these guys play together. We haven't seen the new starters. So that's where I would say probably the biggest question mark is. But I also think that if you look at the defense, the linebacker spot is also something where you like the talent there, but there's still some questions. You lost Bryce Betcher to the NFL. I think he was the heart and soul of this defense last year. That's a big place to, replace him. He's the green dot. He's got big shoes to fill. So that's somewhere I'm looking.
How do you feel? Lanning's back. The offense, the defense look great. They're loaded with talent. How do you feel about the new coordinator changes, though?
I love it. So far through Lanning's time in Oregon, he's given us no reason not to believe in his hires, his decision-making. He's hired some great people who have gone on to become head coaches. He had a chance to go out to almost any coordinator in the nation and say, hey, I want you, I'm going to hire you. And he chose to stay in-house with Chris Hampton and Drew Maringer. I think that says a lot. We have not seen them do it at this level yet, but I've got no reason to believe they can't do it at this level. So I'm excited to see what they bring and kind of what wrinkles they bring. But in the end, I think this is a very much an Oregon system, and they're kind of just fitting in and running what's worked, because for the past few years, a lot of track record that this thing works pretty well.
Zach, you look at the schedule, and certainly the game that pops out is Oregon at Ohio State. If they were going to lose a game in the regular season, that probably ends up being the one. If they were to drop another, though, would it be at USC? Would it be home Michigan, home Washington? What do you think is probably the second toughest game on paper for the Ducks outside of the Ohio State game?
I think it's that USC game, mostly because it's just early in the year. And like I said, you may not have all of the answers yet to this offensive line, to the linebacker core. You still might be mixing and matching a little bit and trying to figure out your best 5 on the offensive line in particular. USC is a good team this year. I think that they, I have them as a predicted playoff team, probably a 10 or 11 seed, but I think they can do some things under Lincoln Riley this year and with Jaden Maiava. We'll see if they get that defense figured out, which we've said every year going into the season. But I think that will be a tough game on the road, a pretty tough environment. So that's one I've got circled. You've got the last stretch of the year where you've got Ohio State, Michigan, and Washington in a 4-game stretch. But those 2 games outside of Ohio State at home, Oregon rarely loses games at home unless you're Indiana. So I'd say that USC game.
Zach, before we let you go, Oregon, you like them to win the national championship. A lot of people do. What would be the team in the country that scares you the most if they went up against them?
Man, that's a good question. I really like Notre Dame this year. I know that's not a hot take. They're really good. The thing about Notre Dame is I think they can get there at this point in the season or in this stage of college football. It's a longevity game. You got to get to December and January healthy. Notre Dame, I don't think there's many opportunities for them to be banged up along the year. That schedule's pretty easy. I know you got the Miami game, but I don't know. I like Notre Dame's chances to get deep in the playoff. I think they're a very talented group. I like CJ Carr. I would probably predict Notre Dame.
There you go. Our guy Ryan Horvat's a big Notre Dame fan, Zach. So we might have to have you back for the championship game if it ends up being Ducks and Fighting Irish. And credit to Zach Neal for playing her today. Great stuff. Give Zach a follow on X at Zachary C. Neal, Oregon beat reporter for USA Today's Ducks Wire, co-host of the Believe in Oregon podcast and the Ducks Rising podcast as well. Zach, go drink some chamomile tea, my man. Rest up. We appreciate the time.
Thanks, man.
Thanks, guys. Appreciate it.
Yep. Great stuff from Zach Neal on the Oregon Ducks. And then our last guest to join us is Bobby Schneider talking Nebraska. Give Bobby a follow on X at Bobby_Schneid. What's going on, Bobby? How you doing?
Doing well. How are you guys doing? It's an honor to be on here.
Yes, sir. We're excited to have you, Bobby. Look, man, I think Nebraska's fan base is the best in college sports. You guys are absolute freaks, man. It doesn't matter if it's football, volleyball, baseball. They show up, and they deserve better than what they've been getting the last few years. And I thought Matt Rule would be the guy. It feels like it's a make or break year for him, though, doesn't it, Bobby? Like if he goes like 6-6 this year, maybe even 7-5 again, you think there's a shot that maybe Nebraska's looking for a new coach?
I wouldn't say that. Nebraska has a lot of money invested in the Matt Rule. They extended him 2 years last year, of course, when that Penn State smoke was going around. And Nebraska does have Trey Taylor coming in, a 5-star quarterback, along with a top 20 recruiting class. So that'd be really tough to say. But I will say it's time to win. It's year 4. There's no excuses. And people always talk about the schedule. I mean, you're playing 3 of arguably the best teams in college football. You're playing the best college football season we've probably ever seen with Indiana, although it's a new team. Of course, Ohio State, Oregon, those are beasts. I mean, that's 3 national title contenders, let alone you got Washington coming to town. You've lost, I think, 10 of the last 11 to Iowa. Iowa's owned Nebraska. So there's 5 games right there. And then you got to go to Illinois. So on paper, it's brutal. It's a brutal schedule, but that's just the Big Ten. You got to win these games, and it's year 4 for Matt Rule. It's time to show some progress, and you brought in some transfers. You have, I believe, the 3rd oldest roster in the FBS of returning players on both sides of the ball as well.
Let's start with the offensive side of the ball. Dylan Raiola, that experience didn't, I guess, really work out. Me and PJ were really high on Nebraska, like he said, the last couple of years after the Matt Rule hire. Last year, there was 8 games, I believe, where they didn't even push past 350 total yards on the offensive side of the ball, and I think they won 2 of them. So let's start on offense. How do they fix that?
I mean, it started with the offensive line. I mean, you saw they go add 3 transfer portal guys, Brendan Black from Iowa State, Paul Mbanga from LSU, and then Tree Babalade from South Carolina. Jeep Wade has been raving about Gunnar Gatula, another guy returning. It sounds like they got 6 legit guys. All have had starting experience at the Power 4 level there. And then, of course, Justin Evans is the highest ranked returning center on PFF. He's projected to be a top, highly regarded draft pick next year. And then Elijah Pritchett, you kind of saw a little bit of his potential as the season progressed along. I mean, he was one of the lone bright spots in Nebraska's bowl game at left tackle. And it's a new scheme in a sense of how they're going to block. It's going to be, I mean, they're going to still run zone, but Jeep Wade coming over from Georgia Tech has been huge, I think, and that you'll see that this fall, installing some counter and stuff with that. And then, of course, now you got a mobile quarterback. It totally creates a different dynamic with Anthony Calandria. I mean, the dual threat quarterback is back at Nebraska, and you got the Mountain West Offensive Player of the Year coming.
The defense has been really solid under Matt Rule. Bobby, would you expect that again this year on that side of the ball?
Oh, that's the main question is what will this Rob Arich first year 4.25 look like at Nebraska? Allowing nearly 5 yards per carry was really Nebraska's kryptonite last year. I mean, even USC, there were several moments where they just pump off them 10-yard runs and stuff. They'd shut down the pass, but teams didn't have to throw the ball against Nebraska. And I think that kind of skewed the stat line is because teams could run down their throat. So you're really banking on some of these guys that have been in the program. Riley Van Poppel on the defensive tackle position. You got a couple of transfers like Jasir Whittington coming from Pitt. And then on the edge, you're hoping that you can kind of maybe get some pass rush there. The linebacker core and the defensive backfield, I mean, I think you feel pretty good about there, especially that linebacker core with Owen Chambliss, who was a first-team All-Mountain West coming over from San Diego State, 110 tackles too.
You look at the beginning, you brought up the schedule, man, but I mean, I'm looking at, they open with Ohio, Bowling Green, North Dakota, on the road against Michigan State and Maryland to start the season. Then it gets a little rough with Indiana on the road against Oregon, Washington, Illinois. What do you think, like a realistic, you said it's time to win. Do you think this team could win 8 games? What's the goal for the year?
I wouldn't even put a number on what's the goal. I think it's just a win. I don't think that 7 wins is acceptable. Now, do I think if I were to predict Nebraska's record, I'd stay 7-5 because Matt Rhule's 2-10 in November since taking the Nebraska job, and that's where it's most pivotal. Yeah, it sets up for Nebraska to be 5-0. I mean, Nebraska had a great start last year as well. Went up to Minnesota and laid an egg. So, yeah, you should be 5-0. You might have a chance against Indiana. You're coming to your house, but you've seen how that's derailed Nebraska's season. You go Indiana, Oregon, have a bye week. Washington comes to town, then you go to Illinois. And then you still go to Rutgers. I mean, Rutgers has arguably the best running back and one of the best receivers in the Big Ten, and Antoine Raymond and KJ Duff. And then Ohio State comes to town, and then you go to Iowa.
I wanted to bring that up. The Indiana game has to be the biggest on the schedule, only because, like, especially after the Matt Rhule hire, it was Indiana's kind of what Nebraska was supposed to be. And it's like what we say in base, like, you know, or in college basketball is better when North Carolina is good. You know what I mean? Like, we always do that. Baseball is better when this team's good. I feel like that's how everybody feels about Nebraska. So how big is that Indiana game? And how shocked are you just how Cignetti turned that program around? Not even turned it around. I mean, they were never anything, and now they're national champions.
You got to give Cignetti his flowers. Like him or not, that dude just wins. I mean, he develops talent. He doesn't need the 5 stars per se. He will take a guy that went up and proved that he was a productive player at a different school at a smaller level and has developed him. So you got to give him the benefit of the doubt. And I think you'll see the same with Josh Hoover and everything. But yeah, you got him at home. You'd hope that Nebraska kind of remembers that 56-7 loss, I believe is what it was in 2024. But it's tough to say it's the most important game on the schedule because you could argue like the Washington or the Iowa game is the most important. But you're going to have a lot of these big time recruits coming in for 2028 as well that are really looking at Nebraska. And how many more times can you sell like, hey, we haven't beaten a ranked opponent since 2016, but we're changing that. It's got to change at some point if Nebraska wants to find a way to have a sustainable success for the coming years and have fans show up in the stadium as well.
Bobby, I was just going to bring that up. I mean, think about what you just said. Nebraska hasn't beaten a ranked team since 2016. Folks, it's been a decade since Nebraska's beaten it. That just like is impossible almost. You said you think they're going 7-5. I don't know, but Bobby, I kind of feel like this might be the year. I don't know who the team's going to be. Maybe they go on the road and Kinnick and beat Iowa. You get Washington traveling to the Midwest. So far since joining the Big Ten, like they haven't been great. None of those really West Coast teams outside of Oregon have been all that great making that trip. But do you think they finally beat a ranked team this year? And just like, what has been the common theme in all those games when they go up against ranked teams? Like, why can't they finish and just beat one of those teams?
You could make the argument for talent, but then again, you also see other teams that find a way. I mean, I think Wisconsin last year beat 2 ranked opponents under Luke Fickell, did not have a good year. Right. I think that Nebraska sometimes like just freaks out. And it was kind of similar with the 1-score losses. That was the main story when Matt Rhule took over. Nebraska's kind of found a way to win some 1-score games or make some comebacks. That was kind of the story of last year. It wasn't pretty, but they found a way to win the Marylands, the Michigan States last year. This year, I think your best chance is probably Washington. You got them coming to Lincoln. It's going to be that big blackout. I'm sure a lot of you guys saw the USC blackout. The atmosphere was crazy last year. So that's probably your best bet. I'll be optimistic and say Nebraska finds a way, but I don't think it's going to be from the big three. I'd say the most likely teams that would be ranked you could beat would be Illinois, Washington, or at Iowa.
I wanted to ask you about Dylan Raiola, actually, just because obviously, you covered him. And we saw Dante Moore, where he went to UCLA and kind of forced his way on the field as a true freshman. Didn't work out. And then he sat a year, which a lot of guys aren't going to do. Learn the Oregon system, and now there's a good chance he's the number 1 overall quarterback. I know Dylan Raiola got hurt, but he's going to sit now in that system. A little bit different of a system at Oregon. But do you think it could work out for him? I mean, he was so highly rated coming out of high school, or do you just not see it there?
I think it could work out, especially because Oregon is more built for the pocket passing quarterback. However, I mean, there's a reason I think that he was okay with redshirt, and he's got to learn how to get the ball out of his hands quicker. A lot of those sacks were not his fault or the offensive line's fault last year. You can't expect to have 5 to 7 seconds in the pocket on a consistent basis. I mean, that was half the reason. I mean, if you watch that Minnesota game last year, I believe half of those 9 sacks were because he sat in the pocket for 5+ seconds. But he does have the arm talent.
Great stuff. Bobby Schneider. Give him a follow on X at Bobby_Schneid. Covering Nebraska football there. And Bobby, wish you a great season, man. We really appreciate the time. And I just, I hope Nebraska can find a way to beat a ranked opponent this season, man.
Yeah, well, thank you guys
too.
so much. Best of luck. Hopefully it's a good college football season for all, and appreciate you having me on.
Yes,
Thanks, bro.
sir. Thank you, Bobby. 10 days, folks. 10 days away until week 0 of college football. So we are getting close. That was our last guest today. Unfortunately, we couldn't get an Ohio State, Washington, USC. We're hoping to grab some of those schools, but they either got practice or they got media availability for some of those players. So the timing did not just work out. But of course, Ohio State, the number 1 team in the AP poll. So we got to talk about the Buckeyes for the upcoming season. And look, we've been going through some of these teams, Horvat, and as you get really in a lot of these conferences, like some teams just get fortunate with the luck of the draw and they avoid some of the top teams. Other schools, they got to play all of them. And Ohio State's got to play all of the top teams this year, dude. They are at Indiana, at USC, home Oregon, home Michigan, at Nebraska, as we were just talking about with Bobby. Then they also are at Texas in week 2. I think this is the toughest schedule in college football. And again, we know in the playoff, in these 2 years where they've gone to 12, 9-3 is usually a death sentence. Now, with this schedule, the fact that they're Ohio State and they start number 1, maybe they're able to overcome it. But like, what do you think, man? 10-2 for Ohio State? Are they going to go 11-1? Like, what would be your thoughts?
That's the thing. Like, I could see them running the table just because of the talent that they have, right? They got the quarterback. They have maybe the best college wide receiver. I mean, we do this every other year with these wide receivers now, man, especially at Ohio State, but he's an absolute freak. The defensive side of the ball, I don't think there's going to be any drop-off. You look at the recruiting class. You look at what they do in the portal. I like Ryan Day. I mean, I don't like him as a Notre Dame guy, but, I mean, I do think he's a good coach. When they won the national title a couple of years ago, with Chip Kelly, they completely they had that loss and then nobody believed in them. And then they revamped and they completely changed their offense going into the playoff. Just a great program. I could see them running the table because of the talent. I could also see them having a couple trip ups, maybe only winning 9 games, especially it's so hard now. College football has changed so much because of the portal and because of the NIL and all that. And just because of schedules like this. I mean, last year I thought Clemson was going to be a double-digit win team. Klubnik was going to be a top 10 pick. I was wrong. I thought the same thing about Penn State. I thought Penn State was going to win it all last year. They were a complete disappointment. I don't think there's any chance Ohio State's a disappointment, although losing 2 games in the regular season would be a disappointment. They're most likely, at worst, 10-2 and back in the playoff and competing for a title, but that schedule is brutal, man. And for example, I like Texas this year. Last year, I liked Ohio State in that game. This year, I kind of like Texas. I think Arch is going to be much better with a better offensive line in any sort of a run game. Arch was the leading rusher for Texas last year. The conference games are going to be tough. So on paper, they look perfect. I really do like Julian saying, but I could see there being a couple trip-ups, man, because of that schedule. The Big Ten's loaded this year, and that non-con's pretty tough with the Texas game.
Ryan, I think Ohio State, Texas is the biggest game of the college football season. The pendulum swing from that game for either team is just going to be massive. Like we saw it last year. We all thought both of those teams opening the season oh, whoever loses that game will still be fine. Maybe we'll get a rematch in the playoff or whatever. It ended up being too much for Texas to overcome, losing that game to Ohio State, because then they could only afford to lose one SEC game. They lose two, and then they're out of the playoff. Like, the same could be said for Ohio State this year. If they lose that game to Texas, then all of a sudden they just have one game that they can drop the rest of the season. And with road trips to Indiana, USC, Nebraska, Iowa, and home games against Oregon and Michigan, that's a tough ask. Even though they might be the best team in the country, the most talented team in the country, just losing one game in that Big Ten schedule could be really, really tough. So I think Texas-Ohio State is the biggest game of the season. I think there's a chance that the loser of that game could miss the college football playoff, while the winner of that game might just end up winning the entire thing. So just a massive, massive game in week 2. I also will say Arthur Smith is the offensive coordinator for Ohio State, which I don't think a lot of people realize. So while they do maybe have the best player in the sport in Jeremiah Smith and a terrific quarterback in Julian Sayin, I don't know. We all saw what Arthur Smith looked like in Atlanta.
I don't want to cut you off, but I want to say something, right? Okay, so I don't want to make that mistake, though, where I'm like, Arthur Smith is a dumbass, and so I have to fade the Buckeyes offense, because Julian Sayin's a stud. Jeremiah Smith's a stud. And this is the mistake I made on the defensive side of the ball, and the fuck up, excuse my language, but I'm so angry with Penn State last year that I made with Penn State, right? They make the Allen hire, and I'm like, oh my God, the Penn State defense is going to be even better. Ohio State, replaces Jim Knowles, not Allen, Jim Knowles with Matt Patricia. And I'm like, Patricia? I know the Buckeyes defense has a ton of talent, but we remember Matt Patricia as a head coach in Detroit. We remember, it didn't work out, and he was pretty much a doofus. But, man, that hire was awesome, and the defense was even better. And they did they really complicated some stuff up for opposing offenses. So I'm not going to make that mistake. The offense will probably somehow be even better with Arthur Smith, man. But I was just thinking about that. I was like, I remember last year just completely shitting on the Matt Patricia hire, and that defense was lights out last year.
They were, to his credit. I think a lot of that, though, was because of Caleb Downs. I think Caleb Downs was a generationally good college football defender, at safety. He started for Nick Saban as a freshman at Bama, which, just rarely happens. And then he is a freak. I thought he was the best player in the draft this season. You just don't get guys like that every year, every 5 years, every 10 years. And even though they were so loaded, they had all those top 10, top 15 picks, right? With the Stunny Siles and the Arvell Reeses and all these guys. To me, Downs was the key to that entire operation, especially for a guy like Matt Patricia. So yes, they're going to be loaded this year. Yes, they're going to have great talent yet again and plenty of NFL draft picks, but I'm just not sold that Matt Patricia was so great in year 1. Now all of a sudden he's going to be really good. I want to see what he looks like without Caleb Downs. We also have somebody commenting that Ohio State, the best team in the country. When was the last time Ohio State won the Big Ten? At Ty C. Summerall 8718. Ty C, I don't think it's really much of a hot take to say Ohio State's the best team. They're the number 1 in the AP poll. They're the favorite to win the national title. And they also won it 2 years ago. So I understand they haven't won the Big Ten in
Neither
a while.
of us are picking them, though.
No, we are not picking them to win the national championship. So for that, I agree with them. But I do think they are on paper, potentially with the talent, they are disgusting. So,
yeah, as a Notre Dame fan, I hate them more than anybody. I got to be honest, man. So, Ohio State, I just kind of think, their prices and everything are about right. Penn State's the team that intrigues me the most. I was shopping around a little bit, and I was looking at their win totals, where they're at right now, because I played at 8.5. 8.5 right now is the best price, -166. I believe at BetMGM. Everything's plus money, but you could bet Penn State right now over 9.5 wins. It's just funny, man, because last year, high expectations. They lose both running backs. Drew Aller's gone. New coach and Matt Campbell. And yet still, while we say, rebuild year, that's not what the market's telling you. 9.5 wins? A 10-win season? Right? You know what I mean? So, why not? If you think Penn State's going to go 10-2, sure, 9.5 at +120 is a good price, but why not just bet them to make the college football playoff 3-1 or better? I think I'm seeing I think you could still get a +350 out there. Penn State's my sleeper team, not only in the Big Ten, but in college football this season.
Dude, that's what I've been telling you.
I believe in Matt
plus
Campbell.
460. Yeah, I bet him too. Oh, God, I hate that we're a Penn State show again. What could go wrong? But I'm with you. I like Penn State too. We were talking about him with Daniel. The fact they avoid the big three, no Oregon, no Indiana, no Ohio State.
No Drew Aller.
No Drew Aller. We like Rocco Beck. I like DeAnton Lynn as the defensive coordinator. Are we a Penn State show again? I think we probably are.
I mean, like, unfortunately, I just feel like every other year at least we're gonna go back to our roots on this show. I'm surprised that I'm not talking myself into Michigan. If Kyle Whittingham wasn't 125 years old, I'd be all over that train, dude. Utah's made me so much money the last decade, minus the last year with Cam Rising, 45-year-old Cam Rising. But what I love about Michigan, going back to our conversation there, last year they were 14th in the country, and everybody's like, oh, they lost Justice Haynes. They're going to be even better. They have probably the best 1-2 punch in the backfield in the Big Ten. They're going to average close to 220 rushing yards. They're going to be top 10 in rushing. And Whittingham, like, that's what they did at Utah. So if they play tough defense, if they run the football, and if Bryce Underwood isn't a complete bust, Michigan could be this. Like, Michigan could also be a 10-11 win team. I know a lot of people are betting their unders, man, and I don't love the schedule, but if they could run the rock and get back to playing, like, lights out defense like they did under Harbaugh before Wink Martindale, I think they're going to be scary.
Dude, I'm with you on Michigan. Look, we know in football, if you have a quarterback, like, you always got a chance. And Underwood, again, he was like the undisputed #1 recruit coming out of college in 2025, just last year. He didn't have a great freshman year, but you bring in Whittingham, whose MO is always, his teams are great in the trenches, and he brought over his offensive line coach, Jim Harding, to go along with the Michigan talent that you usually have on the O-line. I'm with you. I kind of think they could be, if Underwood turns into the guy that a lot of us thought he would be, it could be a dangerous team. What are your thoughts on USC? We didn't have anybody talk about the Trojans this year. I have seen a lot of people making the case for them to make the playoff. Jaden Mayava comes back at quarterback. A lot of people feel like this is Lincoln Riley's best team since he's been in LA. They also have a tough schedule. Home game against Oregon, home game against Ohio State, at Indiana, at Penn State. The non-conference is cake, San Jose State, Fresno State, Louisiana. So they should be 4-0 going into the Oregon game. The reason I can't get there with USC, Lincoln Riley cannot beat any competent team in the Central or Eastern time zone since he's been at USC. He can't do it. He can beat them when they come to the Coliseum. He can beat them in LA. But if you ask his team to go on the road and beat a bowl caliber team, just a bowl, not even a national title caliber team, bowl caliber team, they can't win that game. So again, like, on paper, you're looking at, like, at Rutgers, at Penn State, at Wisconsin. Like, these are games that they should win. They're not going to win all those games. And then if you think that they're going to lose to Oregon, Indiana, and Ohio State, I don't see the path for USC making it to the playoff. So I think the Trojans will probably be like an 8-4, 9-3 team potentially this season, but I can't see them getting to the playoffs.
So I've been going back and forth on them only because they got the quarterback, like you said. They're going to be able to run the ball. The receivers, I mean, even though they lost Lemon, they're going to be loaded there. The offense, they're going to score over 35 points per game. I'm not worried about that. I do worry, like you said, when they step up in class. But what I worry, and I think the defense is going to be good. I keep going back and forth, man, because, like, this has to be the year. Because 8-4, 9-3 is just not good enough, especially for that contract for Lincoln Riley. And, like, we're talking about Dan Lanning. Remember, like, he was the golden boy. They got to get to the playoff, man. But the problem is the schedule. Like, they should have done that last year. Last year should have been the year that they won 10, 11 games and got there. They didn't play Indiana last year. Now they have to play them in November. They didn't have to play Ohio State. They get that before Indiana. They have to play them. They're going to play Penn State, who I just got done hyping up. They're going to play Wisconsin. We both like Wisconsin this season. I bet their win total over, man. I think Fickle's finally going to get that thing back on the tracks.
Yep.
That schedule is freaking brutal for USC. So that's my issue.
I'm with you. I can't get there. The way that their schedule has right now, they play 5 ranked teams in the AP poll, including a 3-game stretch where they got to go home Oregon, home Washington, at Penn State, that Wisconsin game, and then Ohio State and Indiana, as you mentioned. It's just going to be tough. I mean, last year, like you look at USC, right? They went 9-3 in the regular season. Their losses were at Notre Dame, at Oregon, and at Illinois. So they pretty much beat all the teams that they were supposed to beat, and then they lost all the road games to good teams. Again, you look at their schedule this year, and they do have to play Indiana on the road, Penn State on the road, and then they get Ohio State and Oregon at home. So if they just continue to do what they've been doing under Lincoln Riley, they lose the road games to the ranked teams, and then I can't see them sweeping Oregon and Ohio State at home. Maybe they win one of those games. I can't give them both. I kind of feel like 9-3 is their ceiling. So
yeah, the win total pretty much everywhere is 8.5 right now.
And that's right. That's
plus
the right
115, line. Plus 110. So 9-3 is not going to get them into the playoffs. So I think that's just about right. Now, it wouldn't surprise me, like if they did win 10 games, if they win one game that they're not supposed to, maybe they beat Oregon, they do get them in. Although I cannot pick right now Lincoln Riley in a game against Dan Lanning. I was just watching that clip where it looks like Dan Lanning's all loaded up on cocaine, and he's like breathing out of his nostrils, dude. And I know like he struggles to win the big game himself, but I'm taking him over Lincoln Riley any day. So I'm staying away from USC.
Washington Huskies are kind of an intriguing team. Like I don't think they're going to make the playoff. I don't think they're going to win 9 or 10 games or anything like that. But Jett Fish is a good coach. DeMond Williams comes back at quarterback. They also got a tricky schedule. They're at USC, at Oregon, home Indiana, home Penn State, and home against Iowa. So maybe there is a path for them to kind of win 9 games there. If I'm being honest, though, Ryan, I kind of thought DeMond Williams was going to be a lot better than he actually was last year. Like, I thought there was a chance maybe he could be in, like, the Heisman conversation because of what a great dual threat he is, and they had some great receivers last year. This year, you lose some of those guys. You lose Boston at receiver, and I don't know, man. And Washington is another one of these teams. They're just like USC. When they got to travel to the Eastern time zone or the Central time zone, they usually lose those games. So that, to me, I think USC is a better version of Washington, but I kind of view both of those teams the same way.
Yeah, I like DeMond Williams as a college quarterback. I mean, he's like 5'10", 185 pounds, so I don't think he's anything more than a college quarterback. But that offense was fun, and I think like a little underrated last year, man. They averaged over 400 total yards and 34 points per game. I think like at best, probably 7-8 win season, though, when you look at the schedule. It's just so hard. I like all these teams in the Big Ten, right? Like I can't fall in love with every single one of these teams. But I think 8-4. That's where I would be at with Washington. I mean, actually, as I look at it, the schedule is not terrible. No Ohio State, no Illinois, no Wisconsin, who we're high on, no Michigan. 5 of the first 6 games of the season, they get at home before they go to Purdue. I'm not very high on Purdue this year. And then they get a week off before they take on Nebraska. And, Nebraska, that's most likely a loss, but they get a full week to prep. So with Williams, with Fish, they got a lot of returning production, and I do like what they did in the portal. Again, like maybe they are. It wouldn't surprise me if they were the sleeper team, but I think 8-9 wins is probably their ceiling.
I think that's fair. I would agree with that. And then you brought up Wisconsin. I told you when we were doing this pod like a month ago, I took a flyer. I always take one flyer just about every year on a team to make the college football playoff because in 2 years that we've gotten the 12-team playoff, Ryan, right? You had Indiana make it in the first year when nobody thought in Cignetti's first year Indiana was going to make the playoff. And then last year, you had 2 group of 5 teams make the playoff, right? You always get weird shit that happens in the college football playoff. There's always a thing or two that nobody expects. So I took a shot with Wisconsin at 30-1 to win or to make the college football playoff just because they have the easiest schedule in the Big Ten. No Ohio State, no Oregon, no Michigan, and no Indiana. We both love the quarterback that comes over in Colton Joseph, who was one of our favorites in the group of 5 at Old Dominion. And if you've been watching Wisconsin football, it's kind of unbelievable what's happened to them in the last 3 or 4 years where they bring in a transfer quarterback and he gets hurt within the first 2 or 3 weeks in the season, like clockwork. Every year it happens where they bring in a new guy. They're thinking, okay, maybe we'll get some good quarterback play this year. And like clockwork, he gets hurt in the first 2 or 3 weeks. So if Joseph can just stay healthy, I think they'll be much better than they've been on offense. And then defensively, you kind of know what you're always going to get out of Wisconsin. Like we were talking about with Zach Neal. I mean, they beat 2 ranked teams last year in Camp Randall. It's still a tough place to play. Yeah, they open up against Notre Dame and Lambeau to start the season. They're going to lose that game. But outside of that, again, because they don't have to play any of the top teams in the league, maybe they just lose one game along the way. It was 30-1, so took a shot with the Badgers to make the play.
I got to be honest. I saw, not that I pay attention to it, but, like the guys that do gambling data for a living and do the insights, I don't really care about like betting splits, but I think I saw Notre Dame is the most bet team to win it all, and they're one of the favorites to win it all. There's a lot of if I could do it, and I don't want to do it, I would bet isn't their win total 11.5?
Who's that? Notre Dame?
Notre Dame.
Yeah, it is.
I'd bet the under. They're going to get tripped up by one of these fucking teams. And I can see it being like Wisconsin, dude. They're going to go 10-2 most likely. And then the committee is going to give them a double bird again. Now, I don't know about that, but it's just like very high expectations. I haven't heard anybody be like, I think Notre Dame's a little overhyped this year. I have not heard one person say that. Everybody loves them. And like in the Midwest, there's too many Notre Dame fans, or if you went there, but like everybody's supposed to hate Notre Dame. Now everybody's like hyping them up. I don't like that. But with Wisconsin, man, you said it. Like if Colton Joseph could just stay healthy, honestly, there's no chance that this offense could be any worse, man. They averaged 12.8 points per game last year. 12.8 points per game. That's like as many as the 6th man for Florida's basketball team. They scored 14 points, 2 touchdowns or fewer in 9 fucking games.
I know. So, dude,
they scored 10 or fewer points in 7 games last season. That's terrible. I had to actually look. It's one of the worst offenses. Penn State was dead last in the country in scoring in 2023 and 24. They averaged 14 points per game and 13. Northwestern in 2022 only averaged 13. 12 points per game, 12.8. There's no chance the offense could be any worse. So let's say they average 20 points per game, 21. That's at least an added 2 wins with that defense. And the pressure's on for Fickle. Like, people hate him, and rightfully so. I think Wisconsin's going to win 8-9 games this year. I think they're going to win 8 games this year.
I could actually see. I do like over the win total. This was Wisconsin last year against Power 4 teams. You ready for this?
Yeah,
14 against Alabama, actually. 10 against Maryland, 10 against Michigan, 0 Iowa, 0 Ohio State, 7 Oregon, 13 Washington, 7 Indiana, 7 Minnesota, and then 27 points against Illinois. I don't know what happened against Illinois, but dude, there was a stretch where they scored 7 points in a 3-week span.
Like, I'm not being a dick here. You could take the best offense in DC, high school football, and I'm not saying it's going to look any better or they're going to statistically be any better. The only difference would be like maybe a couple kids would die on the field or get injured going against like college talent. But how could it be any worse? You're getting shut out. You're getting shut out. You're scoring like
physically. It's kind of impossible to get worse.
That's when you know Alabama needs to get their shit together. You can't be giving up 14 points to last year's Wisconsin team.
If I remember I think it was like it was at 7, and then they gave up like a bullshit touchdown at the end. If I kind of remember correctly, but yeah, looking back, I mean the fact they gave up 2 touchdowns to that team.
I think I bet them in the first half and they covered somehow.
Kind of incredible. All right, Horvat, some of the other Big Ten teams we did not talk about: Illinois, Maryland. You got Michigan, Pat Fitzgerald in his first year in East Lansing. Michigan, Northwestern, Rutgers are some other teams. Anybody else you want to touch? Did you end up doing anything with Michigan State this year, or you passed on them?
Yeah, Michigan State I like, man. I like their win total. I don't know where it's at today, but I'm a big Pat Fitzgerald guy. 18 years of college football. He won 110 and 101 at Northwestern, where he had to recruit people with high GPAs. Now we get to see what he does. You know, obviously, like there's a lot that they got to work on there. It hasn't been very good. So we'll see like how long it takes to turn that program around. But I think that like I kind of like some of the moves that he made. They bring in Nick Marsh. You know, they got some talent. They got Frederick Moore, the wide receiver from Michigan, coming over. I think If you could find a 3.5 like I did on their win total, I think they win 4 or 5 games. You look at the schedule, they don't have to play against Iowa. They don't have to play against Indiana. They don't have to play against Penn State or USC. They had to play all 4 of those teams last year, and they got destroyed by all 4 of them. They don't have to play Ohio State. They get Notre Dame, so that's going to be an ass-kicking. But I think, especially if you look at the non-con, I think this team could win 4 or 5 games. And yeah, the win total, it's a little juiced right now, but it's still 3.5. So I like Michigan State as like a buy low team because of the coaching change. I like Pat Fitzgerald, and I'm glad he's back in college football after whatever went down at Northwestern, where it turns out he was innocent.
He's a good coach. Our guy Bradley in the chats is saying that all the high schools down here in South Florida better offense.
Oh, he's so
Wisconsin.
true. So
I mean, 1,000%, especially last year. I mean, even probably this year. That'll be the case. Northwestern, for me, I think is the interesting team. I'm debating going under on their win total because I don't know if you've seen their schedule. They play week 1 against South Dakota State. Week 2, they have a bye week. Then they have to play 11 straight games on their schedule against 10 Power 4 teams. Why would they do that? Why would you take your bye in week 2 and then play 11 straight games? How does that make any sense? So
I don't know.
Keep that in mind because we will definitely be fading them at the end of the year. When those kids are gassed, they'll have a lot of excitement early. They'll have the new stadium opened up. People will be, maybe they'll do some good things. Maybe they'll play some teams competitive. But there's a stretch where they got to play at Oregon, home Iowa, and at Ohio State. Oh, baby. Those last 2 games at Minnesota and home against Illinois, I cannot wait to bet the Gophers and the Illini in that game. But I saw that. That was one of the weirdest scheduling quirks to me, is that they took a bye in week 2 and then play 11 straight games to end the season.
What's
funny? I
funny?
haven't bet it yet, but I think I might.
I would be on the under with you because there's actually some expectations because they won 7 games last year. I've kind of figured out, I told you this last year because the win total I believe was 3.5 and I bet the over. Any year that there's no expectation for Northwestern football, they win like 6 or 7 games. Any year where people are like, hey, they're not going to be that bad.
True.
They're a complete disaster.
So true. So
and you know what? I'm not an Aiden Childs guy, which is kind of why I like Michigan State. You know what's funny, man? Pat Fitzgerald, former Northwestern coach, he gets the Michigan State job, and Childs goes to Northwestern. So I just thought that was kind of funny. I don't think they're going to be very good. That schedule is brutal. So I'm with you. If anything, under on them. I don't really know what to do with like some of these middle of the pack teams. Like last year, I was pretty high on Rutgers coming into the season. Not high on them. I thought that they were going to be like a covering machine. But this year, I really don't know what to expect from them. But I'm with you on Northwestern, man. I think the under is a good play there. I haven't got there yet, but that would be my only look.
I'm with you, and that's a good note about Childs. I liked him at Oregon State. When Jonathan Smith had him there, I thought he was going to turn himself into a good little quarterback, and just hasn't been the case. But you're so right on the Cats too. Whenever there's expectations, that's when they fail. And again, because they're opening up that new stadium, they won 7 games last year. Braun's turned out to be a really solid coach. I think the under on Northwestern might be the play. With that team.
Not to cut you off, I should say though, because we kind of skipped over them. The team that so you said you were going to take a flyer, or already took a flyer on Wisconsin to make the college football playoff. I hate to do this because nobody's a PJ Fleck guy unless maybe you live in Minnesota or you're a member of PJ Fleck's family. What if this is the year for the
our guy Bradley likes the Gophers to win 9 or 10 games, and he doesn't know why. Sounds like you're in the same boat.
I'm with him, dude. Drake Lindsay, right? Like, I love the big 6'5", 235-pound quarterback, man. And, when you think like Minnesota football, you think they're going to run the rock. But last year, like, he was pretty good. There was 5 games when he completed over 60% of his passes. They won all 5 of them. Now, they need some wide receivers that are going to create separation. But the offensive line under PJ Fleck at Minnesota is always going to be good. Now, when they step up and play like real defenses, that's an issue. And they were, I believe, 129th in total offense last year. But I think the offense with Lindsay should be better. The defense is probably going to be pretty solid. I'm just looking at this schedule right now for them because I haven't done anything with them yet. I kind of like Minnesota this season, man.
No Ohio State, no Oregon.
No Oregon,
no
Illinois, no USC. I think
Yeah.
I think 8 wins is a realistic expectation for them. Maybe I'll take a flyer on them to win the Big Ten if I have a couple drinks this weekend or something. Nothing yet.
You
But
know
I'm
what?
with them on Minnesota. I think they're going to be sneaky good and competitive this year.
It's a good point on Drake Lindsey because, look, you got Dante Moore, you got Julian Sayin, you got Josh Hoover, right? Like, you got some really, really good quarterbacks in the Big Ten. Lindsey's the best one that nobody talks about. He's he's an NFL quarterback. And I like the running back Darius Taylor too. Defense is always solid, like you said, with Minnesota. I wish that towards the end of the year they got some more warm weather teams. Now they do get UCLA at home in November, which is great. I also kind of wish that I guess you can't play USC and UCLA in the same year. So the fact that they get UCLA in November is a good thing. But yeah, I mean, they avoid a lot of the top teams. So I don't know if I can get to the playoff with Minnesota, but I could buy maybe 8, maybe 9 wins with that team. We'll see. They did go 8-5 last year. Always a great bet in a bowl game too, because PJ Fleck, his starters are most likely going to play. They're going to be motivated. So if they get to a postseason game, I'll likely be on the Gophers as well. Horvat, how many teams are making the playoff out of the Big Ten this year, and who are those teams?
Ohio State, Oregon, Penn State.
Just 3. No Indiana.
Yeah, probably Indiana too.
I mean, how do they not make it?
What about Michigan? Where are you at with Michigan? Under or over?
I just think the schedule's too hard.
Just like
I would actually maybe lean over the win total at 7.5 just because of the upside if Whittingham can get Underwood to play better. I think Oregon, of all the teams actually to make Big Ten, or out of the Big Ten to make the playoff, I think Oregon's the biggest lock, I would say.
I like Oregon.
They have the easiest schedule. Lanning always beats the teams he's supposed to beat. I mean, they're just loaded. I think the Ducks are definitely in.
I like Oregon the best. It's I keep wanting to say, man, can Indiana do it again 3 consecutive years? But that's what college football is, right? Every year, if you're in the SEC, you're like, can Saban do it again? And yeah, even a down year is a 10-win season. Can Kirby do it again? Yeah, Georgia hasn't won a title in a couple of years, but every year they're winning double-digit games and they're in the playoff. You know what I'm saying? So, with Indiana, I think the expectation now is they win 10 games. So 4 or 5 teams most likely getting in from the Big Ten. I do think that one of these teams will be a letdown, though. And it's hard to say, even with that schedule, it's going to be Ohio State. I Penn State's my dark horse, my sleeper team. I am hearing a little bit too much love, I think, though, for Penn State all of a sudden.
I don't think so. I don't
No?
think there's I don't think so. I think of
Good.
anybody doing a podcast, we're the only one that's
Good.
maybe simpatico on Penn State. I'll go Indiana, Oregon. I'll go Penn State as well. I know I took a flyer on Wisconsin to make the college football playoff. I don't know if I'd pound the table and do that.
No.
Maybe for this exercise, or maybe, next week, if we make some big predictions, I will. I go back and forth on Ohio State. I really do. I mean, they are so freaking loaded, dude. That team is just, the firepower that they have. I worry that they're last year's Texas, though, Ryan, where it's just we thought that Texas team had so much talent too, and then they lose that early season game to Ohio State. The schedule's too hard in the conference, and then they just miss the playoff. I don't know if that's going to happen this year with Ohio State too. Brett McMurphy also, if people haven't seen, on Twitter, always drops some great nuggets when the AP poll is dropped. Do you know that 22 of the last 23 years, the team ranked 1 in the preseason AP poll has not won a national championship?
Yeah, I saw that as well.
So
crazy, right?
That is insane. Not great if you're an Ohio State fan.
No.
Now they can obviously make the playoff and not win the title. I don't know. You know what? Fuck it. I'll go Wisconsin. I mean, what the hell?
There you go.
Nobody's picking them. Like I said, dumb shit happens every year in the playoff where there's 1 or 2 teams that nobody expects. So everybody is going to pick Oregon, Indiana, and Ohio State. So I'll be a little different. I'll pick Ohio State out, and I'll go with Wisconsin and Penn State in there.
What would the fallout be if this Ohio State team didn't make the playoff? I'm not saying wins the national title because now Ryan Day has his chip. He's got his championship. But, man, like, there's so much talent. Jeremiah Smith
Well, if they miss the playoff, do they still beat Michigan? Because you and I both know that's the big question.
Let's say they miss the playoff and
lose to Michigan at home.
Then they're calling for Ryan Day's head again. What
they
have you
absolutely
done for me
are. He wouldn't
but
get
you're
canned.
right. If they beat Michigan and it's an 8-9 win season, dude, can you see this team only winning 9 games? I just can't. I think 2 trip-ups max. I do think Texas is beating them. And if not, I got to get back on the Sark train. And I know I hate that, like, Sark can't beat top 25 teams because the last 2 years at Texas he has. And we can't judge, like, newly sober Sark at USC with no talent, like what he did against the top 10. But we could judge what he does at Texas now. If Texas, I think that game, would you argue that game's, it's important for both teams. You've called it the biggest game of the year, and I agree. Would you argue that that game's bigger for the morale and, like, the season-long objective or whatever for Texas, though, with Sark and with Arch? Because last year,
it's not a debate.
Right? Because, like, Ohio State
all the pressure's on
game,
Texas.
They lost when they won the national title game. Everybody was down on them. They lost to Michigan, and then they had to revamp everything up. And that was probably a good thing for them because then they changed their offense a little bit.
Tell me if you think this is a fair comp. I think Texas has the potential to be last year's Penn State, where Penn State had everything going for them in the offseason. We all loved them going in. They lose that early season game to Oregon, and the season just spirals on them. And I think with Texas, if they lose to Ohio State, I think their season could frickin' spiral. Because, Ryan, like, look at what Texas did last year when they had to go on the road. They lost at Ohio State, they lost at Georgia, and they lost at Florida. Their only 2 wins on the road in true road games were against Kentucky and Mississippi State, and they had to beat both of those teams in overtime. They didn't win a single true road game last year in regulation. I know the team's better this year. The offensive line's better. The receiving core is elite. Arch should be better than what he was last year. But, like, Sark, just as much as you and I like him, he's not great as an underdog. He's not great for the most part in big games. And he just has not been great on the road in SEC play. And they got a trip to Knoxville. They got a trip to Baton Rouge. They got to play Oklahoma in the Cotton Bowl. Dude, I think there's a case that maybe they could be last year's Penn State. If they lose that Ohio State game, I could see the season potentially getting away from them.
That's why you got to give, like, these teams credit for playing these non-con, these big games like that, because it could go either way, right? Like, obviously you want to get your losses out of the way early in the year if you're going to lose games in college football because you want the committee to remember what you did the second half of the season, especially in conference play. Like, you're not going to get punished for playing the top team in the country. But at the same point, man, you lose a game like that, even a non-con game, in today's world of college football. Look at Notre Dame last year. Granted, they're not in the conference, but 2 losses, 10 wins, and they're out. And then the pressure is on every single week. You can't have that trip up. And you can't have that trip up in college rivalry games. That's where I'm with you. Like, losing that game while you could say, hey, we lost to a top 5 team. We're only going to get better. We'll be a different team if we see them again in the playoff. Pressure's on if you drop that game. If you win it, you're money, right? You're higher than ever. Then you just have to worry, like, that there's not a drop off. You're not too high. Like, that's what impressed me the most, honestly, about Indiana and Stignetti last year, man. And why it also helped that, like, Mendoza, you could say, like, he's a nerd and he's a dork off the field, whatever, but, like, he went there to play football. Obviously, he didn't even go to class. What did he take? Like, 1 class? He already graduated, but he went there to be the number 1 overall pick, to be the Heisman and to win. Because, like, that's hard. They run the table. They win the Big Ten championship game. And then, Cignetti, I remember he had the quote even after. He's like, I got to get these guys humble and hungry again for the college football playoff in a couple of weeks. So that's the toughest part, is if you're Texas and you beat Ohio State, you can't be too high. But, like, you're feeling good if you win that game. Same for Ohio State. But that game is so important, man, even though it's non-con, because if you lose that early in the year with those 2 teams' schedules in SEC and Big Ten play, you're fucked if you lose a 3rd game.
I'm with that. It is the biggest game in college football this season. Like, I don't really think it's up for debate. Like, it is the biggest game in the sport because both of those teams can easily win the title. But with the schedules, I think there's a world where both of those teams could miss the playoff as well. Ryan, if you had to bet one Big Ten team to win the national title, who would it be?
Oregon. I'm a big Dante Moore guy. I usually watch, all the games at home by myself because I'm a hermit and I have a lot of money on these games. But I made the mistake of not only betting Oregon in the college football playoff last year, but I watched the game at a bar and I was like telling all the casuals, the NFL guys, I'm like, Dante Moore is the best quarterback. Like, fuck Mendoza. And then wasn't it the first play of the game? He stares down the receiver and throws the pick six, or am I tripping? I don't know. It was one of the first plays of the game. He goes on to not even complete like 50% of his passes in that game. But I'm a big Dante Moore guy. They're loaded on the offensive side of the ball like they usually are. They'll be able to run the ball for 7 yards per carry. I just worry, like, when they step up and they play these big games, the Ohio States, like Dan Lanning, he says all the right things. And they show us the cuts of the locker room. And when they're playing Colorado, they're all about the clicks. We're here to kick ass and win championships, blah, blah, blah. I want to see that like in the big games. Dan Lanning has to win the big game. But if I had to pick any of these teams, it's Oregon, man. Right? Like eventually he's got to win one. Because everything's there. They have the talent. They have the money in that program. They have new uniforms every fucking week. They're pumping so much money in the portal and recruiting and NIL. Oregon for me.
They're so trendy. They are everybody likes Oregon. And it makes me not like Oregon. I don't like how trendy they are.
See, I'm like that in the NFL with the Rams. I think the Rams missed the playoffs. Stafford, last year, he was the MVP. He's awesome. Let's not forget about July and August when everybody was worrying that the guy was going to be in a body bag going into the season. Remember with his bad back, this and that. Puka Nacua is spinning off the planet as great as he is. Maybe Aaron Donald comes back. Maybe he doesn't. They made all the right signings. I know everybody loves McVay. I think something happens and they're the bust of the NFL. I think they win 8-9 games because they are so trendy. And that division's fucking loaded. The Seahawks are plus 220. They're the defending Super Bowl champs.
I know.
49ers, I know. And everybody hates the Niners because everybody's beat up in training camp. It's Shanny. He's beat up himself. They'll win 11 games. I'm not there with the Rams. But in college football, I think the Ducks are trendy for a reason. And I'm trying to find a way to fade them. And I can't, dude.
Think about, Horvat, think about last year, right? Penn State was so trendy, and we both love them. And look how that worked out with a coach like James Franklin. And then Texas. Everybody loved Texas. Arch was going to be the next greatest thing ever. They don't even make the playoff. Like, more often than not, right, more often than not, the trendy team just never does as good as everybody else thinks. And Oregon is absolutely the trendy team this year. And again, Dan Lanning, we were talking about with Zach, as much as everybody loves the guy and is solid of a coach as he is, he doesn't win the big games. He doesn't beat the top teams and the top coaches. And he lost both of his coordinators. And even though he's just hiring from within, and I'm sure both of those guys will be do a good job, it's just tough, man, to replace both of your coordinators, win a championship. For me, I actually think it would be Indiana. If I had to pick one of the teams, if I had to place a bet, I just think Cignetti's that good, dude. I really do. And like we see it in college football. I mean, like teams, if they're going to win it, they tend to go back to back, you know? Saban did it. Kirby did it. Dabo did it. And if we all think Cignetti's as good as he is, then why the hell not? Maybe he'll just go back to back. That defensive line is going to be disgusting. I think Hoover's a great fit. Receiver room's awesome. Running back's great. They beat everybody that they're supposed to beat. They don't fear anybody. And you know that they're not going to get outcoached in any game that they're going to play, and they're not going to make any mistakes. So keep doubting Indiana if you will. But if I actually had to place a future on any Big Ten team to win the title, I actually think it'd be the Hoosiers for me.
That happens, and we gotta throw Cignetti in maybe like not the GOAT conversation, because to me that's still Nick Saban. I don't know though, man. If he gets it done and he wins 2 in a row at Indiana and goes to the playoff for the 3rd year in a row, it's gonna be hard to argue. But yeah, they just have the blueprint. They have it figured out now. That's why I don't think that they're ever gonna be. I don't think there's ever gonna be a down year unless the entire team gets hurt. But just because they figured it out and they're hitting out all these portal plays, like portal. It's so important, man, because like we know that Hoover could play the position. You don't know that these 18, 19-year-olds can. And Like, look at Bryce Underwood. So much money that you pump in. Even like if you're UCLA, who I actually they might be all right this year. We already talked about that on the first episode. They could go back and listen to me hype up Nico Imaliava for another season. But like Dante Moore goes there as a true freshman. They're paying him like $4 or $5 million, and now he's at Oregon, and he's going to be the number 1 overall pick. So I would rather go in the portal and get my guy.
Great stuff. Thanks again to all the great guests we had on today. Dylan Sin joined us to talk Indiana, Purdue, and Notre Dame. Daniel Gallen stopped by to talk Penn State. We had Clayton Sayfie on to talk Michigan. Tyler Talkman, Iowa. Zach Neal, Oregon. And Bobby Schneider to talk Nebraska. If you missed any part of today's podcast, you can go watch it back on our live Twitter stream, Twitch stream, YouTube, wherever you get your podcast. We will be doing weekly podcasts, and next week, Ryan, we will have actual games to talk about. We will be previewing week 0, so looking forward to that. For Ryan Horvat, I'm PJ Glasser. This has been Campus Blitz here on Game Day Garage. Appreciate all you guys tuning in and leaving some of your comments as well. We will see you next week. We'll have actual games to talk about.